So this is from an earlier version of the cut, actually, I think from the second version of the movie that we tested. And this Weir coming down the ladder like a spider, upside down, it was always one of my favorite images. We took it out because it was probably felt to be a little too kind of bloody. The movie was very, very bloody, as you can probably tell, even in the release version. I remember at one point someone at the studio asked, is there a chance we could make the movie PG-13? And which, of course, we never could do. And we weren't trying to as well, but we were just trying to kind of get the right balance without tipping the movie also into an NC-17. Weir coming down the ladder upside down, though, was always one of my my favorite images, so it's nice to see it back. It was kind of a little inspired by the deleted scene from The Exorcist as well, where you have the little girl coming down the stairs kind of as a weird spider shape, and we wanted to kind of like reference that in some way. This, again, is from the second tested version of the movie. Ultimately, the version we released was the third test. We tried something different at the end of the movie on this one, which is we didn't have Weir come back at the end. We made the end of the movie all be about Fishburne's confrontation with Edmund Corrick, who's the man he'd originally abandoned several years ago and left to burn when he had to close the life bay doors on his old spaceship. So he always felt the guilt for abandoning Edmund Corrick, even though he had no real choice. To save the rest of his crew, he had to let one man die. And we thought we'd try an ending of the movie that really focused on that, was all about his guilt with Edmund Corrick, and made the movie more specifically about these people, the crew of the Event Horizon and the crew of the Lewis and Clark, having to deal with the return of their sins and being tormented by what were their sins or what they perceived as being their guilts and their sins. What you'll see is kind of an incomplete version. We kept the Burning Man pretty much for all of it. You'll see he transforms into Weir at one point, but in the version we tested, we actually mapped flames and bloody skin onto Weir, so he appeared to be the Burning Man. Obviously, there's a lot of flames missing from the Burning Man here. We've been unable to locate, unfortunately, all of that footage. It's one of the interesting things about Event is it was really done, obviously, before the DVD revolution. So there was no real attempt to kind of keep all of this material because there was no real avenue for it to be released. And when it came to the point where we started looking for kind of doing a new version of the movie, we literally had to go all over the world to kind of look for offcuts from the film, negative from the film. A lot of the film was being stored in a salt mine in Transylvania, of all places. Now, this is an extended version of the Visions of Hell. Again, unfortunately, the footage only exists as video, but it gives you an idea of a kind of much more kind of bloody and violent cut. I'm really proud of a lot of this imagery. We really spent a lot of time shooting it. We really wanted to compose each of the individual images so that they looked like a painting, so that when you freeze-framed, it really looked very painterly. Each individual frame was a beautiful, beautiful image. And that was the whole point, was to make the beauty and the horror kind of blend. This is also a slightly extended version of the fight scene between the Burning Man and Fishburne. Again, this was all going to be the Burning Man. It wasn't going to be Weir. And we altered his appearance with visual effects. It was all a little temporary, though. We never finished them because this was the second test of the movie. And although we'd made quite a few changes, the second test pretty much got the same results as the first test. What we discovered was the first version of the movie was very, very long because of the speed in which we'd done the cut. We didn't have very long to cut it. And we tightened it up for the second version, and we changed the ending as well. And I think people preferred the cut of the movie in the bulk of the movie from the second version, but they definitely preferred the ending from the first version. So for the third version, which was ultimately the release version, we went back to having Weir arrive at the end of the movie. Which is really the right thing because, you know, by this point you want to kind of identify with Sam Neill's character a little bit and his journey in the movie and what ultimately he's become. Also, the dialogue in this version is much more specific in terms of hell and damnation and sins. It's kind of like we always called it the Old Testament cut. And I prefer the version of the movie we ultimately ended up releasing where it's just a little more vague. We don't kind of like refer to hell so specifically. I think it's kind of clear, but I think it's cooler that we don't have to actually talk about it. This is kind of interesting seeing some of the green screen work before all the visual effects were added.